What happens when a family tragedy collides with fame, mental illness, and the criminal justice system? What if the most shocking crime isn't just about what happened, but about whether the person accused truly understood their actions? And how does the law decide guilt when the mind itself is fractured? In December 2025, a case involving the family of legendary Hollywood director Rob Reiner sent shockwaves through Los Angeles and beyond. Not because of celebrity alone, but because of the disturbing questions it raised about responsibility, mental health, and justice. According to investigators, the tragedy began on Saturday night, December 13, 2025, at a holiday party hosted by comedian Conan O'Brien. Witnesses later told police that Nick Reiner, the 32-year-old son of Rob Reiner, and producer Michelle Singer Reiner, appeared agitated and disruptive throughout the evening. Several guests reported unusual behavior, escalating tension, and a heated argument between Nick and his father before the night ended. By the early hours of Sunday morning, December 14th, authorities believe events took a fatal turn. Inside the Reiner family's Brentwood home, Rob Reiner and Michelle Singer Reiner were allegedly stabbed multiple times in their master bedroom. Both suffered severe sharp force injuries. Their bodies were discovered later that afternoon at approximately 3:40 p.m. by their youngest daughter, Romy Reiner. Police immediately launched a manhunt after determining that Nick Reiner was missing. Surveillance footage later placed him at a gas station and then checking into a hotel in Santa Monica. By 9:15 p.m. that same day, Nick was taken into custody near the Expo Park and USC area by the Los Angeles Police Department. He was formally charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder with special circumstances due to multiple victims. These charges carry the most severe penalties under California law, including life imprisonment without parole or the possibility of the death penalty, though prosecutors have not yet announced whether they will pursue capital punishment. At first, the legal case appeared straightforward, but almost immediately, attention shifted to Nick Reiner's long and documented history of severe mental illness. Nick's struggles reportedly began in childhood. As early as age 11, family members described explosive outbursts so intense that adults had to physically restrain him. By 14, he began using drugs, started with marijuana, and later progressing prescription opioids. By 15, his parents had enrolled him in his first rehabilitation program. Over the next decade, Nick cycled through nearly 18 rehabilitation facilities. He experienced periods of homelessness, living on the streets in multiple states. For years, addiction appeared to dominate his life. However, those close to Nick later emphasized that substance abuse was only part of the problem. By the late 2010s, his condition evolved into something more severe. In 2020, a California court placed Nick under a Lanham and Patrice Shore conservatorship, a legal status reserved for individuals deemed gravely disabled due to mental illness. During this period, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia and schizoaffective disorder. Under conservatorship, a professional fiduciary was granted authority to manage Nick's medical and psychiatric treatment. That arrangement expired in 2021. According to sources familiar with the case, Nick remained relatively stable for a period while on a specific medication regimen. But approximately 1 month before the killings, doctors reportedly changed his medication due to side effects. After the change, family members and acquaintances described a rapid decline. He became increasingly agitated, erratic, and detached from reality. This alleged deterioration now sits at the center of his legal defense. Initially, Nick was represented by prominent defense attorney Alan Jackson. But during a scheduled arraignment on January 7, 2026, Jackson abruptly withdrew from the case, citing circumstances beyond his control. Despite stepping away, Jackson publicly stated that Nick was not guilty of murder under California law, strongly hinting at mental health-based offense. The court subsequently appointed public defender Kimberly Green to represent Nick. Meanwhile, Nick's siblings Jake Reiner and Romy Reiner released statements expressing profound grief for their parents while also calling for compassion toward their brother. They described Nick as seriously ill and urged prosecutors not to seek the death penalty. Family sources say they view the tragedy as a result of a catastrophic mental health failure rather than premeditated violence. However, Reports also indicate that the siblings have stepped back from funding Nick's legal defense, a decision that followed the withdrawal of his high-profile attorney. As of late January 2026, Nick Reiner remains held without bail in a high-observation mental health unit at the Twin Towers Correctional Facility. His arraignment has been rescheduled for February 23, 2026, where he is expected to enter a plea. Legal experts say 3 possible paths now lie ahead. First, a judge could rule Nick mentally incompetent to stand trial. If that happens, criminal proceedings would pause, and he would be transferred to a state psychiatric facility for competency restoration. Second, Nick could plead not guilty by reason of insanity. To succeed, the defense would need to prove that at the time of the killings, his mental illness prevented him from understanding that his actions were morally or legally wrong. If successful, he would not be sent to prison, but instead committed to a state mental hospital, potentially for life. Third, prosecutors may secure a conviction for first-degree murder. They are expected to argue that Nick's actions after the incident, including fleeing and attempting to evade police, demonstrate awareness of wrongdoing. As the case moves forward, it raises deeply uncomfortable questions. Where does accountability end when mental illness begins? Can justice exist without punishment? And how should the legal system respond when tragedy sits at the intersection of illness and violence? As of now, no final judgment has been made, and until the court decides, the outcome remains uncertain. So here's the question for you. What do you think the final judgment should be in this case? Should mental illness outweigh criminal responsibility, or should the law treat this as first-degree murder? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more in-depth true crime stories that explore the darkest corners of the human mind, subscribe and join the conversation.